Good evening, multi-gamer. How are you this evening? We've only just started, so I'm just getting a couple of things set up, and then we should be ready to head over to SimBrief, and we'll set up a short flight plan. And I'm just going to take us through how I tend to do that. So yeah, just bear with me one moment. And if there's anything in particular that you are wanting to be taken through, please just ask away, and that's what this evening is all about. So I don't want to do a huge long flight tonight. It literally is just any questions you've got. I'm going to take them, do what I can to help you out, and in particular this is questions about the A320 in Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, because as we all know, we've all experienced, if you've got it, it doesn't work quite the same. Good evening, Gabriel. How are you, my friend? Hope the exam preparation went well the other day. Right, so I'm going to open SimBrief up in a moment, and hopefully you'll be able to see that as well. That's if I've got this all set up correctly. So there we go. There's a flight plan all set up for the SimBrief all set up rather for us to enter a flight plan into. So at the moment, bet you can't guess which airport we're actually at. I've given you a slight clue by using the Airbus livery, but if we look at this, my first concern is it's going to be a very tight manoeuvre to get us to the runway. Look at that. So we'll worry about that when the time comes. But yeah, there we are. So we're actually at Howden, which is in Cheshire. It's one of the Airbus factory plants in North Wales, and quite often we see the belugas here, as this is where they make the wings for the A350 and up until recently the A380 as well. But unfortunately all that stopped for the time being. Now the A380s, I think the last wing left the A380 wing, the last one left a few months back, but A350s wings are still being produced, of course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and set up a short flight plan in SimBrief now. So let me just open this up, and what we're going to look at doing is just going here from Howden down to Birmingham. So it's not a long flight. I say today's more of Q&A, but I just wanted us to actually be able to fly somewhere. So first of all, airline. You can see I normally enter a EasyJet airline. I'm not going to bother with that. We can enter any flight number we want, so I don't know, today's date 1911. So we're departing from Howden, which is Echo Golf November Romeo, and I said we'd have a look at getting down to Birmingham, didn't I? Echo Golf Bravo Bravo. So straight away SimBrief has now just filled in a few more details for us. Jared, good evening. No, this is the A320NX mod, but it is the developer version, so it's not the stable version, it's the developer version. So there's a couple more things on there. Fair play, good evening to you. So I'm going to take you through a few of those as well. So we've just got just go back to this flight plan here. Alternate is London Heathrow. I don't fancy that, so let's to be fair, we don't really need to enter that, but I just want to take you through how you set up the SimBrief question. Torben, question: what do you do when the active runway is changed during your flight and the SimBrief import was the wrong one then? Good question. I'll tell you what, we'll have a look at that. So I'm going to select the airframe, which this one is the airframe I normally use here. Anyone that uses SimBrief, you'll know you've got all these default aircraft here. This particular one is one that I've set up in SimBrief and added to my fleet, and I will make it downloadable as well at the end of the stream. You can actually download and use this. This is basically tailored to the Microsoft Flight Simulator's version of the A320 Neo. So if I now select that, let it do its thing, and this already has all the zero fuel weight, the dry operating weight, so the empty weight of the aircraft, already built in for you. So if we look at this, we've got departure runway 22 written there. So and there's a very, very short route, which it has suggested. Over here, the operational flight plan layout, I always use EasyJet for obvious reasons. We're working in kilograms. Contingency fuel was set to 5%. You can change this as well. You can have it as a percentage or time, etc. And just 30 minutes of reserve fuel as well. So yeah, SimBrief, if you've not used it before, please have a look at getting into that, because it is absolutely fantastic and saves you a lot of time when it comes to flight planning, because as you'll see in a moment, what we can actually do is, do you know what, passengers, let's just set that to 0. We'll have a dry empty aircraft. Yeah, what you can actually do is import the flight plan from SimBrief and pop it into Flight Simulator, or you can do it all manually, which is what we're going to do this evening, just so I can show you what's actually happening on the MCDU. So, oh, hang on a minute. For some reason, something went a little bit wrong there. Let's just try that again. Oh, there we go. There it is. Don't know why that happened. Kicked me out and then logged me back in again. So a very, very short flight, and if I scroll down a little further, you should now be able to see the flight plan that it's given us. So there's all the details that we need. Let me just check you guys can see that okay. Yeah, there we go. Right, okay, so let's jump into the cockpit. Let me get rid of that for a moment and we'll jump in. So as you can see, everything is still turned off. So going through the full checklist. Now there are obviously some things on the checklist which you wouldn't really need to check in the sim, just because it's a simulator. Fair play, can you show us a missed approach and reprogram the FMS to line up for the approach again? Yes and no. One of the things that the real Airbus computer has is when you program the STAR and the ILS approach, then the missed approach procedure is already part of that. Is already part of your flight plan. So if you do have to go on a missed approach, the procedure is already programmed there for you to follow. If you see any of the charts from Navigraph or any that you can find online, you'll see it has a missed approach procedure, and those are already pre-programmed in to the Airbus computers. That, however, does not happen in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, so you have to do those manually. But in terms of doing a missed approach, at the moment it is almost as basic as toga power, reduce flap by 1 initially, just to get the speed and the aircraft climbing again, and then it's following the missed approach procedure, which is on your chart if you have them to hand. How do you know your descent rate? Well, I can show you that as well. You can either do it manually, or you can allow the computer to control that. So if I just go through a checklist which I've got in front of me. So first of all, we check that the engine master switches are off. Let me just check. Can you guys see my my cursor here so you can see what I'm doing? Yeah, should be able to. So first of all, engine master switches are off. Engine mode selector is normal. Weather radar is off. That's very important. You don't want that on when you've got people walking outside the aircraft, as you could cause them some damage. Landing gear lever is down, and that sounds very simple, doesn't it? But it is on the checklist. Both wiper selectors are off. You don't want the windscreen wipers going when you turn the batteries on. You can scratch the windows if it is not raining. So we will now turn on the battery power, which is these two up here, and we start to hear a few things clicking in and a few beeps and things like that. Multigamer, do you use the OBS Studio? Yes, I do. So flight sim question, but yes, it's the OBS Studio. David, when I manually enter the flight plan into the MCDU, the altitude stays at 5,000 feet even when I'm in flight. It doesn't alter. Right, okay. Bearing in mind, we can come to a few of these as we get flying. But bearing in mind, you do have to set your own altitude, which is just here. This little dial here. If I just turn up the brightness, so we can see that a little bit. Okay, but I will definitely get to these questions as we get flying, particularly if they are in relation to flying. And if I forget, please do ask away again, and we'll cover it. So, external power we can now set to on. There we go. So the external power's on. We get a few more noises coming through. Once the external power's on, we should test the fire test buttons. So we hear the beeping in a minute. There we go. Engine 1, engine 2, and of course the APU. There we go. Bram, how do you know when to descend, or does the Airbus calculate this automatically? The real Airbus does give you an automatic top of descent to try and follow, but again, the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 A320 does not do it just yet. So we do have to work that out, and I will go through that as well once we get in the air. So if we just turn on the fuel pumps, and we'll also set the APU going. So start the APU and then count to 3. 1, 2, 3, and we can turn on the APU master switch as well. So cockpit lights should be set, so we can turn the navigation logo lights on. That just lets people on the ground know that there are people in the aircraft. So the navigation logo lights are the red and the white lights at the red and green lights rather at the wing tips. And we can also turn on the signs as well. Turn on the seatbelt signs, even though we're not carrying any passengers today. And we arm the emergency lights as well, which is that's the second setting on there as well. Tony Project TV, my Airbus doesn't want to follow the flight plan. It turns left by itself, loses altitude, gains speed, basically had a mind of its own. Yes, fair enough. This happens quite a lot, and do you know what? This is a good time to just have a look at this. One of the things you must do is if you head over to your controls and click sensitivity, see how we've got a dead zone on all of these. Not this one, because this is the thrust, and I don't use the side stick for it. But here you can see we've got a dead zone of about 13%, and that's this little flat curve here. Make sure that you've got a decent dead zone, and all that does is it makes sure that any slight inputs from your side stick, your joysticks, your yoke, etc. don't start to interfere with the aircraft controls. So big tip, always have a dead zone set so that I can rest my hand now. I'm resting it on the flight stick. You can see it moving ever so slightly, but there's not actually any input coming in because it's in that dead zone. So there we go. So hopefully that's the first thing you need to do to make sure your autopilot hang on a sec. Ooh. Yeah, we can apply and save that. Make sure the autopilot does follow the flight plan, although there are a couple of other things as well which we will have a look at as well. Andy, I can't stop VIA waypoints being added to my approaches. If I delete them in the McDo, they are entered into the flight plan anyway. Andy, you are correct, and this annoys me as well. You can't get rid of them. Now, some of the published approaches actually do have a VIA in them all the time, but realistically you don't really use those, particularly if it's a VIA that happens to be a VOR over the actual airfield. Yeah, that's just annoying, and hopefully that will get sorted. That will get sorted pretty soon. Multi-gamer, fuel and weight. That's a very quick and easy question to answer. Up here, what do you press to put fuel and weight? And it's this one just here. There's your fuel and weight. So adjust your fuel here, up and down. Adjust your payload of passengers, baggage, etc. here, and all the final figures are down there. So I'll come to that again in a moment. So I'm just going to continue with the checklist. So when APU is available, we set the air conditioning power. Now we don't actually have any passengers today, so on a normal flight you would just have the packs to normal. If it's a very full flight or it's very cold, you can set it to high, but as we've no passengers we can actually set this to low, and then we just turn the cockpit temperature up, we turn the forward cabin temperature up and the aft cabin, and I think, if I am correct, where are we? We do actually now, I believe this was shown on one of the conditions. There we go. Look at that, it is as well. So there's the cockpit, there's the forward cabin, and I purposely didn't turn up the aft cabin, so look, that's at 18 degrees, which you don't want to give your passengers that temperature, so if you turn that up, that should now, there we go. So that's quite nice, isn't it? A nice little thing there. Aviator Dan, good evening. Okay, so as you can see as well, we've got our primary flight display and our navigation display is just not working. Well, that's because we've not got the ADIRS aligning. This is basically the GPS of the GPS of the aeroplane. Turn on the APU bleed, so now we're pumping the hot air into the cabin. So we need to turn this onto battery. Computer number 1 first, computer number 3, computer number 2. And they will start aligning. In reality, they normally take about 7 minutes. However, at the moment, I've got them set to instant, just for the purposes of this video, so we can just get in the air a little bit quicker. We might not make it to Birmingham, actually. I need to be finished in about an hour or so. But we'll definitely get up in the air and have a little bit of a play about and try and answer some of the questions that we've got. So with that, I can come down to the MCDU. There are a couple of other things that we need to check as well as part of the check sheet. So we turn the crew oxygen supply needs to be on. We need to recall any of the ECAM buttons, ECAM messages, which is this button here. That's just basically if there are any problems that have been cleared off here, they will reappear if they need to. So it doesn't seem to affect anything at the moment. So we've then got oil quantity to check, the flaps levers need to be checked, speed brake lever check, retracted and disarmed, parking brake is on, and we've got the rain. You then need to do a few other things in real life, such as rain repellent, emergency equipment, etc., which you don't really, you can't do in the simulator. Okay, we also set TCAS to TA mode, which is there, and if you've got a squawk, we can then turn on the transponder as well. Okay, so let's have a look then at the MCDU. So let me just position this so you can see a couple of things. First of all, I want to bring the SimBrief flight plan up, but I also want to make sure that we don't block your view of it, so just bear with me 1 second. So I'm going to show you how to enter a few things on there, so hopefully you can see that, and you can also see the MCDU as well. Alright, so if you've got the latest fly-by-wire developer version of the mod, you've got this nifty little menu, the MCDU menu, and if you press the ATSU button and then go to the main menu of that, you can actually request the weather. So if I go for a weather request, you'll see at the moment there are no airports in here because I've not gone through the inits page. So if I just do that, let me just have a look at the where's it gone? There we go. So we are currently at Echo Golf November Romeo, Echo Golf November Romeo, and you can see I've made my first mistake. This wouldn't really happen. There's a GPS primary button here. You need to clear that because otherwise you actually can't put anything in. This bit at the bottom, just for information as well, where you're actually typing, is called the scratch pad. So if you ever hear anyone referring to the scratch pad, this is what they're talking about, the place where you actually enter information. So Echo Golf November Romeo to Echo Golf Bravo Bravo, and you select that. There is no routes already pre-filed. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to use a cost index of 8 just because that's the standard EasyJet one and an easy one to use, and we'll be cruising at a really high level of 9,000 feet, which is written as 090. You can also pop the temperature in there. If you don't, then that's fine. The computer actually calculates the temperature for 9,000 feet, and it's usually pretty close. So cruise temperature is minus 7 degrees. There it is. So that's in there as well. So Darren, last night you flew to Charles de Gaulle and it flew around in circles around the airport. Had to land manually to fly it. Yeah, that does sound like a bit of a config error with the autopilot. what has started to happen, and this seems to be a new bug, is suddenly halfway through the star, or between arriving from your flight plan and starting the star, the aircraft just sort of shoots off towards the final waypoint in the flight plan, which in your case would have been Charles de Gaulle Airport, by which point of course you're still high in the air and you'll just circle round and round, which very annoying. So there is a way around that, and we'll have a little look at that as well. As I say, if there's any of these things that I do forget once we're in the air, please do remind me. Keep hammering your questions away. Okay, so we'll enter the little flight number that we selected as well in 1911. Pop that in. You could also enter an alternate, so I don't know, Echo Golf Charlie Charlie Manchester, I think is the one that I opted for. Okay, so that's the Init A page all sorted. Now if we go to the flight plan, you can see that there's not very much there to be expected. So we need to tell the aircraft, and I'm going to do this intentionally wrong. Okay, so let's say we wanted to depart from runway 4. So here you input runway 4, no available SID, so that's fine, we'll just insert that. Okay, so we've input runway 4. We actually wanted to depart on runway 22, but someone did ask what happens if the wind changes, etc., and you want to change the runway. So I'm going to carry on for now. Although actually we need to do the Wrexham 5 SID, which isn't actually part of this. We can't actually do that departure from runway 4. So basically, if you've got all this loaded up in the MCDU and suddenly they change the runway that you need to depart from, it's really not a big problem. All you need to do is go back to the top waypoint, which is the airport, select it, click departure, and you simply change it. It really is as easy as that. Now, rather frustratingly, it seems that none of the SIDs from this airport, because it is only a very small airport, are actually loaded in here. So what we're going to do instead is we'll insert that, and as you can see from the flight plan, Wrexham is our first waypoint. So the way to do that, if we're going to do this manually without a SID, is to select our top waypoint again, and now you can hear it says next waypoint. So I'm going to type in Wrexham. Pop that in there, and there it is. Okay, so let me just get back over to the chat, make sure everyone's with us so far. Ghost Rider, good evening. VMCGHD, good evening, my friend. In that case, you can answer any questions that come up. Really need to find out your name though, because that is a lot of letters to pronounce. Ghost Rider, no, I'm not a real EasyJet pilot. However, VMCGHD is, so if there's any really technical questions, I can defer you over there. Okay, well, with that, I'm just going to continue entering this flight planning just to show you how that works in Flight Sim 2020. So we've got Wrexham loaded in there, and then the next waypoint that we've got is, oh, hang on, where's that gone? So the next waypoint we've got is direct to crew. So again, you just click on Wrexham here on the left side key, and we can type in there crew, and pop that in the next waypoint field. And now you'll notice that, and this will come up quite often, particularly if you're typing in VORs, that we've now got duplicate names. There are 2 crews in the world, however, the clue that you're looking for is the distance. One's 33 miles away, one's 3,173 miles away. I'll let you decide which one it is that we're meant to be choosing. It is obviously the one at the top. So we enter that in there. That's actually a new feature. That didn't used to be there, the distance. They just used to give the latitude and longitude points, so you had to be a little bit knowledgeable as to where you were in the world. So that's a new feature added by the fly-by-wire team. Okay, and as you can see then from the flight plan, we're going to be planned to land at runway 33 at Birmingham. So to pop that in, click on the destination of Birmingham down here, Echo Golf Bravo Bravo, hit the arrival, which is now actually as well, it's now moved over to the right hand side of the screen. It used to be just here on the left, but that was incorrect. In the real aircraft it is over here on the right. So we select arrival, and we're looking for runway 33, which is that only a localizer approach. That's annoying. Oh no, there is an ILS 33, missed that. So there's ILS 33, and we're looking for the Chase 1 Charlie, which is this top one here, Chase 1 Charlie. So if we select that, and now here is where we actually get the issue that someone was referring to earlier. We've got the VIA just here, and we can go for no VIAs. However, it always reverts back to, for some reason, the top one, which in this case is the Birmingham fix. Although we know that our last waypoint, one of the waypoints that we're using for this is Chase, so I am going to pop that in there. I'm just going to bring the charts up for that actually. Let me just find that. And I don't like referring to charts too much when I'm doing stuff like this, because I am aware that not all of you will have the charts to hand. If you type delta into a waypoint, it takes ages because there's that many. Right, so Birmingham. Let me just check the star for Chase, and where are you? Yeah, okay, we'll go with that. We can go via the Chase waypoint. So we insert that, and then suddenly there we go. We've got everything keyed in. Now, one of the things that I want to draw your attention to is here. Can you see how underneath crew we've got USR, these user points? I've referred to this in the tutorial video. These user points are basically flight plan discontinuities between the end of your flight plan and the start of the star. And what I find tends to happen is, if we didn't, well, after we got to Chase, if we didn't select direct and go to Chase using the direct button, then what would happen is that's when I find a lot of the aircraft seem to vary away from your flight plan, and they go straight to this final fix down here. Very annoying. In the real world, it's not called USR. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain it should just be flight plan discontinuity. And what you should be able to do is hit the clear button, there it is, and clear this out, which didn't used to work. However, this may be breaking news. That seems to have done a job. So if I now insert that, oh, this may have just solved a lot of issues. I could do a full tutorial on this just on its own. Alright, we've now got rid of the actual, we've now got rid of the flight plan discontinuity, the USR point. I'm not certain that happens all the time. We may have just got unlucky there, because I have tried that in the past. So we'll keep an eye on that, definitely. So we've got the flight plan sorted. Let's have a look at our performance page. So we'll be using flaps 1, so we can just pop that in here. And the trimmable horizontal stabilizer setting, or THS, that's where you'd set the trim prior to takeoff. That all depends on your center of gravity, which, if we want to go into details with that, I can do, and already have done, with one of the other tutorials on the channel. If you look for the advanced MCDU setting, then that will talk you through that. But in reality, we don't actually need to enter this. It doesn't make any difference to the calculations that we need to do. So what I will do is also change the transition altitude to 6,000 feet. And let's have a look now. If we go back to our init B page, at the moment we've not got anything set up for this. So res rules, sorry, are we going to crew twice? Should we have a look at that? Has that messed it up, deleting that USR point? Let's double check. Oh, it has, hasn't it? Maybe we should have left the USR point in, and it would have been easier once we got there just to press direct to Chase. So I'll tell you what, can we clear crew? We would have spotted that as well, because I always check it on the plan mode of the navigation display before setting off anywhere, especially in Flight Sim 2020. So if we delete that and just check it, So that looks a little bit better. We've got crew chase, there we go. So that's tidied that up a little bit. Good. So let's go back to the init B page. So I said we weren't going to take any passengers, so it was a nice empty flight. So our payload today actually is 0. Gives us a nice centre of gravity. So our 0 fuel weight centre of gravity is, according to the flight sim, 26.78, or rounded up 26.8. I'm just going to make a quick note of that. And the 0 fuel weight of the aircraft is 41005. Hang on a sec, 41.0, and then that 0 fuel weight centre of gravity, as I said earlier, 26.8. There we go. We can now we'll pop the fuel on board, which our planned block fuel for this is just 2,200 kilograms of fuel, which doesn't sound like very much, but there we go. I've got 2,338 there, so we'll call it 2.3. We'll just pop that in, 2.3. And if you have a look at where it says trip wind on just here, we've got a slight tailwind of 21, which we can put in as T21. And now, can be corrected if I'm wrong, but once we've got that there, we enter it in here, the trip wind, and we should then, oh, why didn't that work? Let's try that again. Has been working in the past. Oh, there it is. It just took a little while to load and come up with the fuel figures. There we go. We can put the wrong horizontal stabilizer setting into. That's why we don't do it. Yeah, fair play. Especially as if different load sheets come to you right at the end after you've just finished setting it all up. Okay, good. So our predicted fuel is actually all there as well now, which is quite nice. This is another page that the fly-by-wire team have got working for us, so that's excellent. Did I not have kilograms selected? Oh, we need to make that a default. Strangely enough, that didn't seem to change anything. So that was correct. Alright, so we've got most of the MCDU now is all set up. The fuel page is set up, the performance page is set up. One thing that I will do as well, once I've set all that up, is you can go through and just recalculate the V speeds. Why is it telling me I've lost an internet connection? I hope I haven't. I hope you guys are still with me. Okay, so starting with V2, that's now recalculated to 122, and then it tells me that V1, VR and V2 disagree. Well, they would, because V2 is now lower than VR, so we'll go through and calculate this, clear that message of format error. So VR is also 122, we've still got a disagreement, clear that, and V1 is also 113 that's come up with. And if you just keep pressing those left side keys, I'm not so sure that that's correct. You can tell me if that works in the real world, please, there, HD, because I don't know if you can actually set those just by clicking the left side keys via V1, V2 and VR, but it certainly works in the simulator. Okay, so that's all set up. I'm going to go back to our captain's point of view, and if I just get rid of the MCDU page, the flight plan, so we can see a little bit more. Alright, so once we once we've got all that setting up, we just go through the before start checklist. So cockpit preparation checklist needs to be completed. All the signs need to be turned on. So we've already done the seatbelt signs, no smoking signs are on. Emergency lights are armed. And before we start the engines, of course, we need to turn on the beacon signs. We would also check that the ADIRs are aligned, that's sorted. We'd also check the fuel quantity is all loaded and balanced, which we can do down here. You can see that's balanced within limits. And the flight management guidance is all set. Altimeters are set and cross-checked both sides, which they are 1013, 1013. Turn the flight directors on, again both sides, and I keep forgetting to do this because in the default A320 you turned one on, they both turned on. It's obviously now been modded to be more realistic. Yeah, so we're very low weight, those speeds would be likely, and no, you'd enter them manually. I thought you would do using your using the EFB, the software that you have, but for flight sim that does a pretty good job. Okay, so we're going to start the we'll start the engines. We've got external power on. Yes, we have. We can get rid of that, so we can turn the external power off. The beacon lights are on, and we'll start engine 1. So we should just see this starting to spool up. Minimum allowable takeoff fuel is 1500. Random limitation. We've got just over that at the moment. I think we're about 2000, something like that. The APU has been burning it whilst I've been talking. Now, as I said earlier, I've decided that I'd fly from the Airbus factory just before I started the live stream. What I didn't bank on was the fact that we're going to have a near on impossible turn from where we are. So I'm going to do my best to manoeuvre it without crashing into the building behind us. Not very realistic, but normally you'd be sat at a gate, wouldn't you? Matthew, does the ILS frequency input by itself? Yes, it does once you select an ILS approach from the approach page, but it's always good practice to go to the RadNav page and check it as well. Make sure that all the information's there. So that's engine number 1 started. Starting engine number 2. And there's that Barking Dog song from the PTU. Question for me, HD. Can you actually hear that when you're on the flight deck? It sounds very loud here where I am. I don't know if you guys heard it on the stream, but it does sound perhaps louder than it might do in real life. I'm suspicious they may have over-egged that. So engine number 2 now is just coming up. We're just waiting for that to be stabilised. It normally settles at around 19.5% N1. And what I will do is just show you how I quickly go through and check that the plan that I've got programmed in looks right. And that is to basically, if we set the navigation display to plan mode, so you can see it here, just set it at 10 miles. We can then, if we scroll through our flight plan, you'll see the waypoints changing just there, and you'll see it's got us doing this basically flying over Birmingham Airport, coming round and making an ILS approach in. That is actually part of the published approach, so it does take you over Birmingham Airport. But in real life, of course, what would happen is air traffic control wouldn't vector you over the airport. They'd probably bring you in and around and give you much more distance to get stabilised on your approach. Very, very few airports that I know of, if anyone is listening, tell me I'm wrong, but very few airports I know of where you actually fly the full published approach procedure, particularly at the moment when there's very little traffic. Alright, so we've got both engines spooled up and ready. Once that's started, after start checklist, anti-ice is as required, ECAM status is checked, pitch trim is set and rudder trim is set. I've not gone through the pitch trim for this. I could do basically, I have a quick tool, which again, if you look at my MCDU setup tutorial, then that tells you a little bit more about that and links to the program that I use to do it. So our centre of gravity is 26.7, which is giving me a horizontal stabilizer position of up 0.4. So we can go in and pop this in. So go to the flight controls page, spin the wheel to up 0.4. With that, we can engine mode selectors back to normal, turn off the APU, turn off the APU bleed, and we have pack 1 turned off. Don't really use pack 1 while taxiing, and remember to turn both off before takeoff. We'll turn the taxi light on as well, and now I'm going to do something which no aircraft ever really does, particularly an A320, is I'm going to use reverse thrust to try and get me out of here. So let me take off the parking brakes, and let's have a little look. There's the reverse thrust opening up. We should start to move in a moment. I did release the parking brakes, didn't I? Yeah. Oh, there we go. And I've just caught the thrust lever, which is why it cut the thrust there. This is not something you should ever do on your first day of flight school, if any of you are going, by the way. But we're making a nice tight turn. We are going to avoid that building, which is nice. Oh, look at that passenger bus. We don't have passengers at Howden Airport. Okay, so now we're taxiing out, which is nice. If anyone has got this latest fly-by-wire mod, by the way, you will have noticed that oh, that bus again. You will have noticed that if your thrust lever is at idle, you will still find yourself rolling forward. I believe that is actually true. That will happen. So in this case, I'm still at idle, and we're just making precise turns to try and avoid the grass. Okay, so whilst doing this, we can just clear a few of these ECAM messages off here and prep the aircraft for takeoff. So on flaps 1, arm the spoilers. You would ding the cabin crew as well, if we had any. And taxiing out to runway 22. Now what I am going to do is I'm just going to set the initial altitude up to 9,000 feet. That's the altitude we wanted to be at anyway. So we'll just hold short of the runway here just to go through the before takeoff checklist. So we need to do a check on the flight controls, so make sure we're on the flight controls page. Oh, where have you gone? There we are. Flight controls, so full left, neutral, full right, neutral, full back, neutral, full forward, neutral. All that looks good, and also a rudder check as well. Full right, full left. All that's working very nicely. So that's flight control. So you'd also do a briefing with your first officer, co-pilot. Flap setting is confirmed. FMA and takeoff data would be read out by the pilot flying and checked by the pilot monitoring. Transponder would be set if we haven't got a transponder squawk code because we've no ATC. And ECAM memo, we will need to set the brakes to auto brakes to maximum, and then we can do the takeoff config check. make sure it's all green and no blue. Cabin secured for takeoff. Engine mode selector as required. We can put the TCAS onto TARA. We can also turn the weather radar on. And as we're in the flyby mode, you can also lock the cockpit door as well if you if you see fit. Packs as required, which for us is off. And anti-ice, which doesn't look like we're going to need any of that. We've not got any cloud. And of course then the lights. So we'll turn on the landing lights, turn taxi lights to on, and strobe lights as well. So now rolling forward. And of course we've got ground traffic on the runway, haven't we? Good evening, Warden Scrod. Flick this back to arc mode and we'll pop the constraints on the flight plan. I don't think we've actually got any constraints coming out of Horden. Honk the horn. Yes, HD, where is the horn on the A320? Surely it's fitted with one. Good evening, Husky. Right, okay, so I'm going to do a toga takeoff. We've not done a flex temp takeoff calculation for today, so it's going to be a toga takeoff. And watching the speed tape here now on the left. So side stick forward slightly as we advance the throttles. Looking to bring that back to neutral by 100 knots. So accelerating very quickly because we're very light. There's our V1 and we pitch up to about 15 or 17 degrees. Just following the flight director there, which seems to be modelled quite well actually. We do, however, sometimes get an unrealistic bit now where it doesn't seem to target the speed correctly. So we've been told now we can reduce to climb thrust, push the nose down so we can accelerate away. And in talking to you, I forgot to retract the landing gear. That's going to add some drag, isn't it? Alright, and now if at this point we engage the autopilot, it's nice and stable. Climb thrust and accelerating, so we can now retract the flaps, and as we went to climb thrust we can now turn the packs back on. So just zoom out a little bit on here. There we go. So we're going to make this left turn in a moment, and this is where you tend to need to set your own VS speed, your vertical climb profile, because is that a 9? Oh goodness me, 9,000 feet per minute. Yeah, so that's broken. Let's pull the altitude bug, and we can pull the vertical speed, lower that ourselves to a more realistic 2,500 feet per minute. So that is something that needs fixed. They're flight suggestions really, not directives. Does that mean you don't always follow them? Okay, and a nice new little addition to the fly-by-wire mod, we now get the altitude flashing here as we reach our target altitude. Disarm the ground spoilers as well. If you're flying over 10,000 feet, of course, what you would do then is you would turn off all the landing lights, etc. But we're going to leave them on just because we're staying under 10,000 feet. Sea Loud 8, I've seen lots of people suggesting that they have that problem where the altitude knob just spins and spins, and I have no idea how to help you with that because I've not had it happen. So I'm afraid if anyone in the chat does, please help him out. As I say, I've not had that happen. Okay, now Birmingham's not actually that far away, as you can see here on the map. We're only 60 miles away. So what I may do is, if anyone has got any questions or anything we want to try out, now's a good time. I can just take us off the flight plan and come back to this. And so any of those questions that were fired right at the start that haven't already been answered in the chat room, fire them away now, and we can have a quick look. But what I'm also doing whilst we're doing this is just grabbing the charts for Birmingham. ILS runway 33, in which case, as we are headed towards there and we're not that far away, we should probably put the approach in. So if we go back down here, the way to pop the approach in, as you can see, it's also already got runway 33 lined up. What you would normally do, of course, if you're doing a full flight, we put a lot of the details in right at the start, but if you're doing a full flight which is miles away and you need to wait for air traffic control to give you some more information, and you need ATIS to find out what runway you're going to be landing on, it's sort of mid-flight or as you're heading to the top of descent, you'd want to be popping in your which runway you're going to land at, which which star you'd be using, and you can do that at any point during the flight. And if it's wrong, you just go back and do it again. It overwrites it. So if you get, if you're expecting one runway and the air traffic controllers tell you another runway, you just go in and change it. So yeah. Alexander, I believe Alpha Floor is working now. I haven't tested it myself. That's something I don't like to test, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I do think it is working, though. It was certainly working when the sim first came out, because lots of people who had come over from Boeing aircraft and didn't really know how the thrust levers worked were getting Alpha Floor a hell of a lot of the time when they were doing their landing. Nathaniel Buchanan, if you say hi, I will subscribe and like. Well, there you go. Good evening, Nathaniel. Alright, so someone asked earlier if the ILS frequencies were all automatically populated into the MCDU. If I go to the RadNav page now, there it is, ILS 33110.10, and if I double check that that is the ILS frequency, 110.10, it is indeed correct. So yes, there you are. So I suppose we could call this the mini cruise phase of the flight. Now I want to be, according to this star anyway, I want to be at 4,000 feet in about 40 miles time, which means I need to lose 5,000 feet of altitude. There's a very, very loose rule you can use whereby you say we need to lose 4,000 feet of altitude. You can do 4,000 divided by 1,000. So it's basically however many feet you need to lose divided by 1,000, times it by 3, and that gives you how many miles you need to start your descent away. You can normally add 10 to that as well, just so you give the aircraft time to slow down. So if I was going to use that rule now, I would say we're at 4,000. We need to lose 4,000 feet. Divided by 1,000 is 4. Times that by 3 gives you 12 miles. Add 10 to it just to slow down. So that's 22 miles. So when we're 22 miles away from that particular point, I'd be looking to slow down. Now, let me just go back to the questions. It's great having HD online here because you can actually field a lot of the questions for me. So that's good. One of the things I am going to do here is I'm not going to fly the published approach, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to vector myself in. So if we've got air traffic control online, what they probably tell us now is instead of flying this full published approach, they'd probably turn us to a heading about 16170, maybe by crew, because then we'd be coming out just here and then they give us a sort of like a much better, longer final, rather than flying straight over the airfield and then making the racecourse track around. If you want a little bit more information on that, check out the ILS tutorial that I did. It was uploaded yesterday, I think, so that's good. Paul, you've tried to land the ILS at Birmingham on a couple of occasions. The arrival page shows the runway, but the frequency is blank. Is it me? I honestly don't know. I put in the runway there, and we got everything all set up. So I'm not entirely sure. Not entirely sure at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come out of manage mode with the heading. So the moment you pull the bug, it basically just fixes your aircraft flying straight. So you can see that we're just flying in a straight line. And what I'm going to do is we're nearly about 30 miles away from the airfield. So I'm going to start that descent down to 4,000 feet, and I'm going to do a selected vertical speed of 1,800 feet. And the aircraft should start to descend now. Yes, it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn right, and you can see the blue heading bug there. So I just want to come down a little to the right hand side of the airfield as we look at it. So if you're not getting that ILS frequency in there, you can physically type it in. So I mean, it's already there for me, but you can physically type in 110.10 and pop that in. What you can't type in, or I've not discovered a way yet, is to actually type in ILS 33. But if you just type that in there, it will populate the frequency part of the MCDU. So yes, Paul, you can. Fuzzy Condo, has flight plan discontinuity in the MCDU been fixed yet? Well, strangely enough, we were talking about that whilst we were on the ground. We had the user waypoint in the flight plan that I created just before we took off, and we actually managed to delete it. But when we did delete it, it doubled up on a couple of the other waypoints. It almost like entered the star in twice, so we had to go through and remove those. So I think the answer is yes and no. You can delete them, but it can cause problems. So I think we may still be safer just going direct to the next waypoint after the USR point. Christopher, good evening. I would like to ask you if there is another option to find out the trip wind, because I plan my routes with Navigraph but don't get the trip wind. I don't plan them with Navigraph, so I'm afraid I'm not the person to ask. I always use SimBrief just because it really does give you all that information that we're after. Fuzzy, if you rewind it once the stream's finished, you'll see exactly what happened there as we're going through and debating that. So someone asked earlier about missed approaches. Now it's a little bit easier now for me to explain. So the missed approach for the runway that we're landing at is basically to climb straight ahead to 3,000 feet and then listen to air traffic control. They'll tell you what to do next. So what you would normally get in the real Airbus is on your flight plan here, after the final end of the flight plan, which for some reason I don't know why, you can keep going around and round and round on this. Look, that is something that needs fixing. But at the end of the flight plan, what you would actually get is you would get the missed approach procedure here. So it would just say the heading that you're flying to and an altitude of 3,000 feet in blue usually, I think, if memory serves. But that doesn't actually happen here on this just yet. Okay, so we're down to 4,000 feet and the airfield is somewhere over there. And as I say, we're going to vector ourselves in. So this is the actual published approach. You can see we'd fly straight over the airfield, which is about 50 miles in that direction. We'd then do this sort of loop. I'm just coming a little bit wide so that it gives me a little bit more time as well to chat and vector ourselves in just there. So Yeah, if you are wanting to get hold of the charts, which shows you the missed approach procedures and all the things like that, then you really can't go wrong with Navigraph. I know it's a subscription-based service, but if you fly very often, as I do, then it really is a no-brainer. It's something that we want to have. Makes our simulation much more realistic. Okay, so yeah, let's put the landing system on. So if we turn this on here, what we should get, or the ILS display as it's called in Flight Sim 2020, we should get the diamonds here laterally and vertically. So if we turn this on, and we can also check, there's the runway identifier as well. So the runway identifier is IBIR, we know that's correct, and we're 11 miles away from that. It is a DME approach as well, so that that distance is accurate. That's to the threshold of the runway. Could ATC talk down a passenger who's used a sim like this for a long while? Oh, surely that's every flight simmer's dream, isn't it? Go to bed thinking about that. Probably not. Yeah, save that for the films, but in fairness, they might get it down, they might be able to walk away from it, it just might not be a very clean landing. How many people here are watching the series Into Darkness, or Into the Darkness on Netflix? I'm about 3 episodes in and I'm hooked. Okay, so what we would also have done, had it been a longer flight, I would have done this long ago, is we would have gone to the performance page and entered in a lot of details here. So the QNH, which is 1013, just because we're on default weather, 1013. Let me just get the weather at Birmingham. So the weather at Birmingham, Cockpit, Bravo, Bravo. I'm just typing this on a, is, so the QNH is oh gee, I've just realised I can't use that. We're not using live weather, so I believe the temperature was 11 degrees. That may be incorrect, and I can't remember what the wind was, but realistically using live weather, you get that from I usually get that from outside sources, or one of the other things as well, you can now actually get it from the simulator, which I shall show you once we get on the ground, because that's well worth knowing. Alright, so our platform altitude for this approach is 2,000 feet. So I'm going to start that descent at 2,000 feet. And I'm also going to enter the approach phase of the flight so we can start slowing down as well. The minimum descent altitude is 528 feet. So we'll just pop that in there. So that's there, and also appears up here on the FMA. I'm just going to use the spoilers to slow us down a little bit as well, just so we can target the green dot speed. The green dot speed as well, if you're wondering, is the best lift to drag ratio. So it's the speed that the aircraft's targeting. And we'll just see now the glide slope is starting to come alive, albeit we are above it at the moment. Ideally you always want to intercept it from below so you're not chasing it down. So we can now go flaps 1, and now we're targeting the S speed, 10 miles away from the airfield. And we're in open descent mode as well, which means the aircraft will target the best rate of descent. And we're actually nice and slow at this point, so I'm going to make our base leg turn. So I'll turn that to about 100 degrees. And as I say, we're vectoring ourselves in the real world. Air traffic control will be giving you the vectors that you would need. I'm just bringing the aircraft around now. Have a little look at the English countryside. Bath McNab, I've not checked that, but you're probably right. It's 2,000 for runway 33 where we're heading. So given that we're obviously not being controlled by air traffic control, there's no other aircraft around, we can do things nice and slowly. Usually, if you're on VATSIM or something like that, you've normally got speed restrictions, so you'll need to maintain a particular speed. Say they might want you to hold a slightly faster approach just for spacing and to get you in. But we've slowed down to quite a steady speed at the moment. 160 this far out is probably not what you'd be doing in reality. And for anyone thinking about getting into VATSIM, it really is worth the time and effort, because quite frankly the default air traffic control is well, it doesn't always behave itself. Let's put it politely like that, shall we? It seems to want to follow some of these phantom constraints that are put in there. TV mast to the north. Oh, I see. That will be why they've got the different altitudes, is it? Fair enough. Nick, so you have the self-loading cargo add-on. I do have that. The other sounds of welcome to it's just because I use text to speak rather than the default sound packs. Okay, so we don't really want to intercept the ILS at an angle greater than 30 degrees, so this makes it very easy. We're landing on runway 33, so we can head 360 or north as it is. We're about 9-10 miles away from the airfield. And I believe at the moment Microsoft Flight Simulator really overemphasizes the landing lights. You can see them for miles. I didn't tell your mum about it for years. Yeah, I bet you didn't. She'd be having more sleepless nights than you, I'll bet. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to arm the localizer, and we can see that turns in blue. Now I was doing a flight earlier which it turned me away from the localizer, and that would be obviously a bug. Don't know why it did that. I had to sort of manually readjust. Well, there we go, it's captured the localizer, we've got into green, and actually the glide slope's coming down as well, so we can arm the approach, and we've got glide slope in blue as well. Blue means standby or armed. Then when it turns green, it's captured, and it's the mode that we're in. So 6 miles away, we'll pop landing gear down, and we can go flaps 2. And I'm just going to check what our VAP speed for this is, because we are very light. So it is, yeah, 121. That's nice and slow. Flaps 3. Now we do have to be fully configured for the landing, and that's just a Microsoft Flight Simulator issue. Just because you can't change the config mode settings, you have to go fully config. So now we'll do flaps 3. Arm the spoilers. Ding the imaginary cabin. Yeah, I think that's the autopilot being oversensitive. Watch for the wing dip. Yeah, it really is hit and miss, that, isn't it? I think it's one of those that you need to be prepared to happen. And if we look at that, we're not actually aligned with the ILS at all, but we've just passed 1,000 feet, so I'm going to go manual anyway. Let's get us back on track. If anyone was watching the live stream I did into Copenhagen this afternoon, there was a terrible crosswind. So we're crabbing down the runway, and then at the last minute, once we touched down, all hell broke loose. And after that stream had finished, I actually went back to recreate it several times and played around with my sensitivity settings, and it didn't matter what I did, you always hit the ground. I say hit, even if you struck the ground gently with that crosswind, there was almost nothing you could do in the sim to get it to idle out gently. If anyone's managed to do a successful crosswind landing in Flight Sim 2020, let me know.
Minimum.
So there's our minimum call out, we're good. Continue the approach. Wait for one of these wings to drop just in case. A little bit low. There we go, still going down.
40, 30, 20, 10, 5.
And we're down safely. Okay, I'm not going to bother with taxiing. What I'm going to do is, if there's any questions about the sim that haven't been answered, then now's your chance. Okay, there we are. Let me just pop the parking brakes on, because otherwise the aircraft will roll away with itself. And here we are in Birmingham. So hopefully that's just gone through a flight, and we've been very lucky today because VMCGHD has been here to answer questions in perhaps a lot more detail than I could have given you. I am purely, sadly, restricted to the flight sims, but in terms of using the A320 in Flight Sim 2020, it's a very flyable airplane, made all the much better by the fly-by-wire mod. I would definitely suggest using the latest developer version, not the stable version. The developer version has loads of things in it. In fact, I'm going to show you this very quickly. So if I go back to the MCDU, you can get the weather from it now. Go to the MCDU menu and the ATSU menu. It's like that. The main menu there. You can send a weather request. So request the METAR or the TAF, change that. And it's got our two airports, one that we departed from, one that we were landing at. You can add others here as well. So if you wanted Manchester, Echo Golf Charlie Charlie, which was our alternate, select that in there. Then you send a message. That sends the message off to headquarters, whatever. Give it 30 seconds or so. And if we watch on the eCam, just watch here. A message should come through any moment. And that will have the, there we go, company message. So if we go back here, return to the main menu, messages received. There it is, new message, METAR. And there's all the weather information. And that's actually for Flight Sim as well. So this is live as to what's happening in Flight Sim 2020. What you can also do, as I discovered today, is if you go to free text, if someone is flying the fly-by-wire A320 in Flight Sim 2020, you can type in their call sign, as I did earlier. So I don't know, EZY101. Type in their call sign and type in a message, and unbelievably, I don't know how this works, I'm not a computer coder, but if you pop that in there, you can send that. Failed, recipient not found. No, but obviously if the recipient was in the air, one of your friends you know is flying at the other side of the world or whatever, you can send them a message, and that's great. Okay, so very quickly, my A320NX doesn't call out minimums. No, that again is the fly-by-wire mod, the latest developer version, for which to install that is pretty straightforward. There's a link again on the YouTube, on my YouTube channel for that. Let me just see if I can find that for you, because it's well worth installing. Copy the link. Let's pop this on there. So that's a quick video about installing the developer version. Does the performance factor on the aircraft status page work? Oh, where we're looking, HD. Let's get over here. So we know the fuel predicts page has now all been updated as well, so that's good. Let's have a look. Let's So what are we typing in? I'm going to guess this isn't going to work. And that's type on left side key L5. Where would this be, mate? I think I've lost you where you want me to start at there. Oh, here we go. Right, let's have a look. No, that's not working. But always worth checking, isn't it? Why does the info at the top say NA? Just because it was a tutorial Q&A flight. Normally if I'm doing live streams, that's all filled in with the destination and things like that. Yeah, so sadly the arm in the change code doesn't work. Can you actually change the databases? No, you can't. So that was... but it's good to have a play. We've got lots of the ACARS print function. They do, apparently, they want to get the printer working down there. I can't wait to see that working if it does. So yeah. Alright guys, unless if anyone's got any questions, please leave them in the comments, and we'll get back to you on that. I'm going to call that an evening now, as I can hear the dog whining because he needs to go out. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I hope that's been useful for you, and keep flying. Yeah, I know there's a lot of bugs still in Flight Sim 2020, but I would imagine that in the next 6 to 12 months there's probably not going to be a flight sim that comes close, really. Very quickly, when planning a flight plan in the world map, does it automatically tune to the ILS frequency? I don't believe it does, but it's always good practice to check it anyway. So always go to your McDo RadNav page and type in your frequency, and we did this a little bit earlier on. You can type in your frequency there. So if I change this to this is actually Manchester's 109.5. I know that's 23 right at Manchester. If you type that in there, then it changes it. However, it doesn't change the ILS3. But if I now look here, but the landing system information is gone now, isn't it? If I type back the Birmingham one in again, 10.1, does that reappear? Yes, it does. There we go. So if you're ever in any doubt, just type in the frequency manually, and that'll be fine. Alright guys, I'm going to disappear before I have dog mess to clean up. I can hear him howling. Thank you very much for joining us. Please, if you enjoyed that, hit subscribe. Tomorrow it is Long Distance Friday, so we'll be setting off probably about between 9:30 10 a.m. if I can get sorted in time. And I've got a great route for us to do on Long Distance Friday where we step outside the EasyJet cockpit and, well, I'm not telling you anymore. You'll have to join us in the morning and see. So hit subscribe for live notifications and for new content as well and tutorials. If there are any questions that you still have, please do leave them in the comments, and if there's any particular tutorial you want to see, then let me know. I've also this weekend got a showcase landing coming out as well. Again, I'm going to keep that a secret. You have to subscribe and check back and see, check that one out on Saturday. It's a good one, and the only information I'm not going to give you is that the only information I'm going to give you is that it's not in Europe, so it's an interesting landing overseas. Alright guys, thank you very much. Good night everyone. Great to see you all again, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.